Revenge of the Swamp Thing or Rocky Top Romp? Today we're diving deep into the marshy waters of Tennessee, taking a trip to Gator territory. You know, I'm always nervous when that happens. Are the Gators lurking in fear? Or are they just waiting to snap? Who knows? We've got Fansided.com's very own Florida reporter, Will Thomas, today, waiting in with us to gauge just how much the Gators are quaking in their boots. Or should I say, quaking in their scales. So come on in, because when the Vols meet the Gators, it's not just a football game. It is a tussle of tradition, tinged with a touch of Tennessee trepidation. And if I have to say any more alliterations, I'm going to blow my mind.
Broadcasting live from the only establishment in town that can't kick him out, his own basement. The world according to Rocket.
Happy to be here, Rocket. Thanks for having me on.
How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, it's been a good first start to the football season, at least the second week for Florida fans. But, you know, it's just been exciting to see a whole lot of new guys on the team kind of starting to get involved. And I do think that we'll have a better season than we did last year in year two for Napier. So it's been a good start to the season. That Utah game was tough, but it seems like the whole team is bouncing back in general. And I'm excited to see how the rest of the year goes.
Cool. Well, today, in solidarity, I have to say this, in solidarity with Bazooka Joe, it is I, Rocket Man the Third. And welcome to the show. Slap that button like it owed you money. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what the hell? Come on, man. Like I said, our guest is Will Thomas. We had him back in the spring, and he was fabulous. And we kind of built up a friendship, and we'll have a little friendly rival ribbing here today. Mm-hmm. Right, Will?
Yes, sir.
All right. So here's the thing. Let's start here with this question, I think, Will. You've covered the Gators closely. Mm-hmm. What is the general mood in camp leading up to this game? Because a disappointment, as you said, with Utah, kind of bounced back. Much better than we bounced back with our Div 2 team, right? What's the mood down there?
I think everyone's really fired up. And I think a lot of that is because to this point, this is the biggest game of Napier's career at Florida. And I say that because last season, he didn't really beat any big-time rivals. He lost to Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, FSU, and that got mixed in with a loss to Vandy that no one was happy about at all. Right. So this year, you know, if he goes 0-4 against those teams again, that's when people start to kind of ask questions of how much longer are we going to wait on this guy turning around.
Right.
So having Tennessee come to Gainesville, where, you know, they haven't won since I think it's 2003. Correct. So this is the biggest game of his career, because if they win this game, all of a sudden you're looking at potentially a 5-1 start if they're able to go beat Kentucky in Lexington, versus you lose this game, a lot of the energy gets sucked out, and then you could be looking at 2-3 in a few weeks. And right. I think when it comes to the matchup itself, it's a lot more even than we at least thought it was going to be over the summer, especially at the quarterback position, right? Because everyone was really low on Graham Mertz, and now he's kind of coming and proving that, you know, he can be the guy who manages the game. He's not going to make, 40-yard throws downfield, but he's able to limit mistakes. And Joe Milton hasn't quite been as elite as everyone thought he might be. Right. He can still throw the ball out of the stadium. But it seems like that QB battle is closer than everyone thought it was going to be, which I think is giving, both the players, fans, and coaches a more sense of optimism. And everyone knows how important this game is. You talked about it. I mean, this is one of the biggest games of the year in the SEC every season. Sure. So I think all the Gator players and coaches are fired up because they think that, there's no reason that they can't go out there and win this game. And I think fans are just as amped up because they know how important it is.
Both teams obviously have some strengths when you're talking about athletes at this level in the SEC, right? Mm-hmm. Can you pinpoint anything about Florida that you think covering them that gives them an edge over Tennessee this time around?
I think when you're looking at, where Florida's going to try and press the advantage, it's always going to be in the run game, at least with the way that the team is currently constructed, because we saw the offensive line struggle a lot in Utah with penalties, but coming back home, they've been more disciplined, which is able to leave Florida in running downs. And the way that Florida's going to want to play this game is a lower scoring, can we control the tempo? Because if Tennessee goes up and down the field, I'm not sure Mertz can keep up and throw the ball pass for pass with Milton. So Florida's game plan, and what I think they'll be effective at, is just running the ball with Etienne and Montreal Johnson. And last week we saw freshman Trayon Webb. He ran for 70 yards and 2 scores. So there's a third guy in there too that can also give you some good length and some good runs. So I think that Florida's probably got the edge over Tennessee in the run game. And I was looking at some of the film against that Austin Peay game, and your defensive line was absolutely eating them alive, which is what you want to see, when you're facing an inferior opponent. So I think that'll actually be a pretty good matchup. In the box between the Gators running and Tennessee's defense. But I do think that both on the ground and maybe in the short, quick passing game, Florida could find some success. And if they do, that'll set the tone for the rest of the game. But if they don't, they're going to dig themselves into a pretty big hole, and that game could get out of hand. So that's really where the game's going to be decided, I think.
You mentioned this a little bit. The Swamp obviously is known as one of the most deafening, noisy places in the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
Certainly top 1, 2, 3, or 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
How much of a factor? I'm thinking when Tennessee went to Sanford Stadium last year, obviously that was a huge deal. The Bulldogs were pissed off that Tennessee was number 1, and man, they let them have it, and that paid dividends for them. And Napier this week, I read an article earlier in the week, I guess on Monday or Tuesday, where he is soliciting the fans to come out, make it a blue out, and really be noisy. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think every season, the Swamp is consistently pretty loud, but every year they've got one game where they're like a touchdown swing in the game. 2 years ago, it was the Alabama game when Emory Jones went toe-to-toe with Bryce Young in the Swamp and almost knocked him off. It's just stuff that doesn't make any sense happens because of that atmosphere. So I think, this is the first big home game of the year. It's a 7:30 kickoff. Everyone knows how important it is. This is going to be the loudest the Swamp's been in probably 2 years. And I'm going to be there, actually. So I'll be able to let you know. And hope I won't be able to talk on Sunday, I'll tell you that much. But I do think that atmosphere is going to be, it's probably worth a possession, honestly. And that's the beauty of the Swamp and the beauty of the Gator fans.
Sure. Well, and the same thing with Neyland as well, right?
Right.
So you're going to be there. Let me just check on this. Now, the last time we talked, you were actually at Clemson, but you were a Florida fan that for some reason it was too expensive to go to Florida from being from out of state. And so you went to Clemson, but you write and report on Florida. Have I got that right?
Yes, sir. That's it.
All right. So you're still there.
Yes, I am. Yeah. I'm in my
Clemson.
third year here. Yes, sir.
Gotcha. All right. So Tennessee has had a roller coaster of a season, right? They came out and they did okay against Virginia. They were really brilliant, some brilliant moments, and then a couple of stretches that weren't so brilliant. The defense was awesome. From what you've seen, what do you think Tennessee's biggest threat to Florida is?
I would say their biggest threat is that deep passing game because, Florida's defense has been really good so far this season. They were great against Utah, even though the scoreboard didn't show it because, the offense put them in some bad spots and they almost pitched a shutout last week against McNeese State. But there are still a couple of question marks in the secondary, and a lot of that is because of the youth. Jordan Castell is a true freshman we have starting on the back end. Miguel Mitchell's another young guy back there at safety. So if Joe Milton's on his game and you have guys getting downfield, if he's able to connect on a few of those throws, it can really take the top off of this defense. And I think that is probably where Tennessee will be able to hit their big plays. I think if they try to play, a short, get 5 yards of play, run the ball, short passing game, that's where the Gators can probably have some good success stopping them. But if Tennessee is going to have a great offensive day, I think it's going to come with that deep ball because we know what Milton can do with the ball in his hands. And if he's on that night, I think he can do a lot of damage downfield.
Over the years, this rivalry, it's iconic, right? Like we talked about. Are there any past games that come to mind that might parallel what we're seeing here. And granted, we're not as good as I thought we're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that as a slam.
Right.
Last year we were an elite team.
Yes.
But that was because of Hendon Hooker was an elite quarterback. Joe Milton hasn't transcended to that elite status yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've kind of backed off in that vibe this year that we had last year, right? Maybe we'll find it. I don't know. We'll see. But it's always, the swamp is always a mitigator, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any games over the years that you recall? And it might not even be toward Tennessee. I mean, we've got our butts kicked for the past 20 years coming down there. I mean, you mentioned the game against Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
You almost got that one. You see something like that happening this time around, or what?
I do think it definitely could. And, thinking of other games where the swamp was a big factor, I think it was the year before LSU won the championship when Burrow was there. They came in ranked number 5 and Florida was 22, and that place was going bonkers and then Brad Stewart had that pick 6 at the end of the game to seal it. That was one of them. And then just thinking back to Tennessee games, the Hail Mary game with Franks to Cleveland and the 4th and 14 to Antonio Callaway. Like, those are just the kinds of plays that happen in this rivalry. And like the other way around, I forget who it was, but when you guys broke the 11 game streak, I forget who it was who caught that one deep ball that kind of sealed the game away. But like, it's just those kinds of plays that happen in this rivalry. So I think being at home for Florida, that kind of voodoo is sort of going to be in their favor. So I think you could easily see Graham Mertz show up and all of a sudden be able to throw a 50-yard post route. Like, you just don't know what's going to happen. But there's definitely a lot of crazy things that happen when these two teams meet, and I don't think this weekend is going to be any exception.
Both teams have their loyal fan bases, obviously. Have you noticed any interesting fan traditions or superstitions leading up to this game that would be interesting to know about?
I'm not sure if there's anything necessarily unique to the Tennessee week that Florida fans do. I know that everyone gets amped up the second that the calendar turns to Monday, though. And then all of a sudden it's like, it's Tennessee hate week. And a lot of Florida fans, I don't know if you've seen this video, but it's like the Alabama fan just talking for like a minute and a half on why he hates Tennessee. Like, a lot of Florida fans will just repost that and say, this is how I'm feeling this week. So, yeah.
Injuries. What are we looking at for injuries in Florida or at Florida? Are there any?
We're doing pretty good right now, health-wise. Our center, Kingsley Aguakun, he had been hurt for the first 2 weeks, but he'll be back this week. He's the most experienced guy on the offensive line, so having him back, I think, will help with both those false start issues that we had at Utah, and I think just powering through the running game, because he knows what elite run blocking looks like. He did it last year, and I think having him back at the helm of at center is going to be a big difference maker. But other than that, we're not really missing any key players, I don't think. Both our running backs are healthy. All of our receivers are healthy. Defense is very healthy. So we've been pretty fortunate so far not having any bad injuries these first 2 weeks, and hopefully it stays that way.
I'm not 100% sure, but Cooper Mays, our center, has been out from the get-go. There was talk that he had a hernia issue and had a minor procedure, whatever that is. And so I don't know whether he's going to be back or not for this game. And then Keenan Peely, our transfer linebacker from BYU, who has played terrific against Virginia, and man, is just really a force. He's kind of the old daddy on that football team, and just got a lot of poise and a lot of experience, and just a hard-hitting ballet dancer out there at the linebacker spot, right? And he's out. So he may even be out for a month or so. So I'm not happy about that, Will. I mean, I'm not happy about that. So we're kind of going in limping a little bit. It's definitely next man up, but that's just the way football is. So SEC, best conference in football. Do you agree? Yes?
I would, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
How do you think, give me the trajectory of both outcomes of this game. Give me the trajectory of Florida if Tennessee wins. Give me the trajectory of Florida if Tennessee loses, if they beat Tennessee.
Right. So if you guys come in here and beat us, that's going to be a pretty big hit. Not even necessarily from a record standpoint, because 1-2 isn't great, but you look at the teams that we've played, that's fine. But really, I think that's going to be a giant hit to the morale of, the players will get over it because that's kind of their mentality. Is you can't do anything about it last week, but I think a lot of fans are going to turn on the
boosters.
Team. Yeah, right. There's going to be a lot of impatience if Napier loses this one. And I think that could kind of parlay itself into, sure, we'll beat Charlotte, but then we're going to go lose at Kentucky. Then we have to go to Columbia and play South Carolina. Maybe we drop that. Then we're 3-3 walking into the Georgia game, and we know that that's not going to go well at all. So if Florida drops this one, I think it could set off a domino effect that could really send this season kind of out of control. Versus,
so you think that's kind of everybody's aware of that, and that's in everybody's head.
Yeah, because the way the schedule plays out, you've kind of got to win this one to get it rolling, and then you can all of a sudden be 5-1 heading to Jacksonville versus 3-3.
Gotcha.
But if Florida's able to pull this one off, then all of a sudden you're like, all right, we're a pretty good football team. We just beat the 11th ranked team in the country. Let's go take care of business this week and then go to Lexington and beat the hell out of Kentucky. And then you do that, all of a sudden you get Vandy in South Carolina the next 2 weeks, and you're like, this is easy. We're fine. We're going to be 5-1 heading to Jacksonville, and then we just got to win a few more games to
before I get to the prediction. What do you think about South Carolina and Georgia?
It's so weird because it feels like South Carolina's got like one game every 2 years where they just beat someone they shouldn't. And maybe they did it last year with Tennessee. But I just remember a few years ago they went into Athens and beat them. That was ridiculous. Then they took a little bit of time off. Then they came back and won that game last year. So, and also I haven't been overly impressed with Georgia, at least offensively. I know that's a lot of people have that same sentiment, but I think Georgia will win. But I did see that line was like 28 points, and I'm not sure if they can cover 28. But we'll see. I think Georgia will be able to take care of that, though.
I think Georgia will win, but they're definitely not going to cover 28.
Right.
I've been paying a lot of attention to the QBRs lately, right? And I'm nervous about the QBRs because when I look at it and compare it to Hendon Hooker last year, who for all intents and purposes led the nation in QBR. There was one guy that was ahead of him, Jalen Edwards, is that his name, from Kansas, who had like a 91.
Or Jalen Daniels, but yeah.
Jalen Daniels, yeah. And he had like a 91, but only in half the plays. He had like 250 plays. Hendon Hooker had an 89 with like 500 plays. That's a big difference, right? So anyway, Hendon Hooker was elite by every standard of the definition, right? And so, and then I look at Joe, he's had some troubles. He's at 50.9, 51, but Mertz is at 40.
Yeah.
All right. So I got to give us the edge in that metric. I mean, I just have to because strength of schedule is baked into that number, that adjusted QBR, right? And so I like our chances with Joe in this situation versus Mertz. But the thing is, it's college kids. It's college football. Even if they're like, in their 20s, they're still basically kids, and just something can happen and somebody can pop off at any time and become Tim Tebow for a Saturday afternoon, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, I'm anxious to see how this is going to play out. And Spencer Ratliff, who Spencer. Is it Ratliff?
Yeah.
Rattlesnake. Rattlesnake, I call him.
Yeah.
He's got like a 78 or 76 to Beck's 63. I mean, I'm interested in seeing what happens this weekend with South Carolina. Right. And I know now they're going to Athens. That game's at Athens, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. I'm going to be watching that game.
Yeah, I'm curious for that too, because South Carolina's offensive line was abysmal against North Carolina. So I can't really imagine what Georgia's front's going to do to them. So I'm not even sure Rattler's going to have any time to throw the ball But yeah, it'll be interesting to see that.
I agree with that. But then again, I'm going, well, how does he have such I mean, I didn't see their second game, but I watched the North Carolina game, and then I'm checking the QBRs this week, and dude's got like a 78. And that I'm going, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that's really going to be interesting to see that 78 going head up with a 63. And I'm really interested in seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You're awesome. I love to hear you talk football. You're right off the top of your head. You know your stuff, and I'm impressed and I'm proud of you. And I thank you being around. Now let's get to it. You got a prediction?
I mean, I can't not pick Florida, right? I mean, I'm riding for them. I'm going to be there. So Florida won't win this game by more than 7. I'm not sure either team will, because I do think it's going to end up being kind of a slow, grinded out game. No, 21-24, something like that, because I'm not sure that Milton will be able to find his deep ball in an environment like this one. And we know that Mertz doesn't really have one. So Florida's going to try and run the ball. And I think Tennessee will have a more methodical approach. So I'll say, 24-21, 24-17 in favor of Florida.
And wow, you only giving me 17 points? That is cold, brother. That is cold.
I got a lot of faith in this Florida defense, man. Austin Armstrong knows what he's doing. He walked in and turned these guys around. So you'll be our big test, but I think they've got it pretty well.
Okay, so here's what I think. If I'm a betting man, and we all know I am, you know what I'm betting on?
What's that?
The under.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am betting on the under. It's a 59.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at the defense. Our offensive efficiency gets beat. We're sitting at like a 53, 54 offensive efficiency against Florida's 67, I think, defensive efficiency. And Florida, we got a huge advantage there with their offense and our defense, and we got the advantage with the Bazooka Joe over Mertz. So I think Tennessee is going to win.
Right.
But I'm not prepared to do a prediction, but I am going to bet the under.
Right. If you had to pick that 6.5 to cover, you think it'd be Tennessee to win by a touchdown, or you have a lean on that side?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. I would go Tennessee by a touchdown.
Okay.
And somebody offered this on the channel. Even last week, everybody was looking past, Austin Peasley Weasley, right? Mm-hmm. We were all looking past that to Florida, and I was talking about that as a scrimmage and, getting ready for Florida, right? Mm-hmm. So some guy said, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you right now. We're going to be behind at Florida. Nico is going to come in and win the game by a touchdown, and it's Nico's team from that point on. That's what he said. And I got to tell you, while I don't want that to happen, I do want it to happen if it's required to win, right? Because I want Joe to do well. Mm-hmm. He has worked so hard, and that man has character. I mean, he's had character to do what he's gone through. But I'm just throwing that out there just in case that happens. Yeah. You heard it here first with Rocket Man the Third.
Yeah, let me tell you, I'm pretty high on Nico. I think he's going to be a great player. If he's able to walk into this game as a true freshman and win that would be incredible.
Well, it's another Peyton Manning story,
right.
Yeah. I mean, that's what happened with Peyton Manning. You're not old enough to even know about that, but I saw it, right? Todd Helton, the famous baseball player, right? He was the quarterback at Tennessee, and he went down, and there it was in like the third quarter of the first or second game. And they're running this freshman out there, this goofy looking, tall, gangly freshman with the number 16 on it, never looked back. Mm-hmm. So there's always that possibility. Yeah. And I'm just anxious. I don't want that to happen. But if it does happen, man, it's going to be exciting for everybody.
That'd be an incredible story. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, my brother. You're a fine human being. I don't care what anybody says.
Thanks a lot, Rock. Happy to be on.
Hey, man, I'll send you the link. It'll be up. It'll be up later today. Okay.
All right. Sounds awesome.
All right, pal. Thanks,
Thank you,
Will.
man. Bye.
All right, boys and girls. Woohoo. That's a wrap on today's dive into the Tennessee-Florida game. I tell you, it's going to be a good one. If you found the value in today's show, I'd love it if you slap that like button like it was your girlfriend's bottom. I know. I am so risque. And if you haven't clicked that subscribe button, stay updated with all things Tennessee football. A massive shout out to everyone who's shown some love with super thanks and super chats. Honestly, if it weren't for you, I would be eating top ramen every night. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. It's thrilling times. This is what college football is all about, what we're going to watch this weekend. And I thank you for being here. If you like thrilling games, expert insights, and helping me keep those noodles at bay, this is the place to be. Until next time, keep the spirit alive and your game strong. Go Big Orange.